Well, we're officially closing the books on the first month of 2025, so now let us look forward to a selection of 10 new games dropping on Steam in February. From paranormal mysteries to Yakuza adventures on the high seas, February is shaping up to be a fairly exciting month for new releases, and as always, we hope these games will run well on the Steam Deck, but we won't know for sure until full release, so let's go ahead and dive in with our first title, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, releasing on February 4th. A thrilling, story-driven action RPG set in the 15th century, you'll be taking on the role of a young man named Henry as you embark on an epic fantasy adventure, and also it serves as the direct sequel to the original Kingdom Come Deliverance. Although this one will be much larger than the original, it will still retain a lot of the difficulty and grounded storytelling that was established the first time around. And in contrast to the other open-world fantasy RPGs you've probably played, the world might not feel quite as large by raw area and the stakes not quite as high, but it should feel denser and more authentic as a comparatively smaller, more personal medieval adventure. Here's hoping that it plays well on the deck, but again we'll have to see when it drops next week. Moving on from a world of medieval intrigue to some paranormal point-and-click shenanigans, next up we have Slender Threads coming on February 7th. While wandering in an unfamiliar town, Harvey Green follows a string of paranormal events before reaching a grim conclusion. His recurring nightmare might have more terrible implications than he realizes. In this point-and-click thriller, you'll guide Harvey through peculiar streets, shops, and the surroundings of Villa Ventana, all while doing your best to keep your harrowing visions from bleeding over into reality. And I have to say, I'm loving the art style on display here, and as someone who grew up on point-and-click adventure games like Willy Beamish, The Island of Dr. Brain, and The Colonel's Bequest, I just might take the leap on this one at launch when it arrives next week. Next up, let's keep the spooky train rolling with another unsettling adventure, Urban Myth Dissolution Center, which releases on February 12th. At the Urban Myth Dissolution Center, you'll be researching and dissolving monstrous oddities, cursed relics, and dimensional anomalies. You'll be taking on your cases as heroine Azami Fukari under the supervision of a level S psychic and the center director. Told in an episodic format, it's heavily focused on exploring urban myths that roam the internet, and the whole thing plays out in a gorgeous pixel art style visual novel. Between a range of colorful characters and a spine-tingling premise, I'll be keeping a close eye on this one if not for immediate purchase, then certainly by the time next Halloween rolls around. Next, let's ramp up the action a little bit with a remaster, and that would be Phantom Breaker Battlegrounds Ultimate, dropping the next day on February 13th. Offering a blend of side-scrolling beat-em-up action with the heart of a fighting game, this pixel art anime title features 8-player online multiplayer, and is a remaster of the original Battlegrounds, which itself was a spin-off of the Phantom Breaker fighting game series. Personally, I never played the original and have limited familiarity with this series, so I don't have a great point of reference here. But I sure do love old-school beat-em-ups, and it doesn't hurt that a lot of this looks real Scott Pilgrim-y to me. But if you did play the original, you'll be happy to know that this one's been rebuilt from scratch in Unreal Engine 5 for smoother play and flashier effects. So whether you're a newcomer or a veteran who played the original back in 2013, it looks like they've done a great job of bringing things up to modern standards. And speaking of anime-inspired visuals, next up we have The Legend of Heroes Trails Through Daybreak 2, getting its worldwide release on Valentine's Day. Part of the Trails series, which itself is part of the larger The Legend of Heroes franchise, this is a direct sequel to 2021's The Legend of Heroes Trails Through Daybreak. And while I'd love to elaborate further on its lore, honestly the Trails series is one that I only have a little bit of familiarity with, mostly from the Vita days. But from what I've been able to gather from its store page, this should provide plenty of ARPG fun for fans, and if the positive reception of its predecessor is any indication, I'm guessing it's going to serve up plenty of colorful characters, a sprawling world to explore, and engaging battle mechanics that certainly look appealing based on what's been shown so far. Next up, also releasing on Valentine's Day, we have a trio of games from a series that spans decades, and a heroine who's certainly worth celebrating, and that would be Tomb Raider 4-6 Remastered Collection. Now, personally, I fell off the Tomb Raider train sometime around Tomb Raider 3, and didn't get back on in a major way until the 2013 reboot. However, I did play through the Angel of Darkness back in 2003 out of curiosity, and considering I never did get to check out The Last Revelation or Chronicles from 99 and 2000 respectively, I'm kind of looking forward to this one. And based on the comments on videos here, I know at least a few of you are real pumped for this as well. Featuring updated graphics and quality of life improvements for all three titles, it sure looks like this is shaping up to be a fun way to revisit Lara's legacy for old school fans. Or maybe just a nice modern way to check out some of its earlier entries for those who were just curious to see more of that pre-reboot classic Tomb Raider action. And given that these titles are over 20 years old at this point, I'm fairly confident we can look forward to a smooth experience on the Steam Deck. Moving back into the realm of fantasy, albeit the more over-the-top sort, we have the Obsidian developed Avowed hitting on February 18th. Set within the same universe as Pillars of Eternity, Avowed is an action role-playing game that you can play from first or third-person perspective. Utilizing magic, melee weapons, or firearms, you'll square off against a variety of enemies with tons of combat flexibility. And while it's not purely an open-world game, there will be several large open zones for players to explore. And true to form, you can expect a lot of interesting characters and rich storytelling to boot as an Obsidian title, and naturally your choices will have a big impact on how your quests and adventure play out. And while I'm not overly familiar with this world, it's one that I'm anxious to check out this year, if for no other reason than I just really love big, detailed fantasy worlds with tons of exploration. And I'd imagine that if you're at all a fan of RPGs in this vein, like Skyrim or Fallout, this is probably one you'll want to keep an eye on as well. Next up, we've got some mid-90s retro vibes with another choice-driven title, Lost Records Bloom and Rage, also releasing on the 18th. In Lost Records, you'll create memories of a lifetime with some new friends. Then 27 years later, you'll have to confront the dark secrets that you all promised to never speak of again, which honestly already has a bit of an It vibe that I can probably get behind. You'll bounce between the 1995 and 2022 timelines, all while piecing together the mystery of what happened back then, and the impact it had on you and your friends in the sleepy town of Velvet Cove, Michigan. Featuring a dream pop soundtrack and ethereal vibes, it might be relaxing, but I'm suspecting that despite some cozy imagery that we're probably looking at something that's a lot less Animal Crossing and a lot more Oxenfree, but hey, we'll see when it finally releases on the 18th. Next up, a few days later, we have a whole different kind of over-the-top fantasy story, featuring an ex-Yakuza who's now become a modern-day pirate with Like a Dragon Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii dropping on February 20th. And let me tell you, this looks super fun. You'll be stepping into the steel-toe boots of Goro Majima, a man who has lost his memory, but then sees fit to reinvent himself as a pirate on the open seas, all while trying to piece together his own personal mystery. And while everything about this premise sounds amazing already, the fact that it's a Yakuza title means you know it's going to be completely over the top, and the visuals and action are already looking stellar. So if you're into real-time cannon battles and crew versus crew brawls on the high seas, but with a Yakuza combat flair, I'm betting you'll love this one. And speaking personally, I'll definitely be keeping an eye on this one when it releases. Speaking of combat, albeit of the more beastly variety, let's round this out with Monster Hunter Wilds sliding in on February 28th. And if you've already played a Monster Hunter before, you'll have a good idea of what to expect here. You'll track and defeat powerful monsters, yes, but in a new twist, environments within Forbidden Lands can drastically change as the weather shifts, and in turn affect the flow of combat and which monsters will be roaming about for you to hunt given these environmental shifts. So naturally you can expect to change up your tactics while hunting, and when you're not tied up wrangling or, well, killing monsters I guess, you'll also have a range of other hunting partners to interact with and who will support you along your journey. If you're already a fan, then this is probably not at all news to you, but if you are somebody who's kind of just curious to check out the series, this could be a really good jumping on point, because I'm sure Capcom have only continued to iterate on the long-standing history of successful entries for this franchise. Alrighty, and that's it for this one, and I have to say that out of all of the games coming out in February, I'm probably most looking forward to Like a Dragon Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii. But hey, what about you? Are there any particular games that you are most looking forward to, or anything that I missed? If so, let me know in the comments below. As for what's coming up on the channel, I'm actively working on some new retro-themed content related to the Steam Deck, along with a potential showdown of sorts with Nintendo's soon-to-be obsolete Switch Lite, but we'll get to that later. For now, as always, thank you so much for your time and hanging out here with me on the channel, have a tremendous day, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.